how do you do that? How do you start that off? So I'm a dad. I'm listening to this. I'm panicking because whoa, what are my kids looking at? And Ian's just said I need to have a conversation. How do I do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because again, you kind of parent the kid that's in front of you, don't you? That's the reality. And so there is some good advice, and certainly Care for the Family have created some really good advice around how do you have some of these kinds of difficult, awkward conversations and things like that. But equally at the same time, the way I've dealt with this with my two girls has been different because they're both really different. And one's an introvert, one's an extrovert, one processes externally, one doesn't. So, how we've been able to kind of talk around this and think around this has been different. So, on the whole, with both of my girls, the way that, it's slightly different for me, right, because of my job. So it kind of comes up more naturally anyway.
Yeah.
But even so, it's about maybe identifying the moments where you can talk about it and not just let that just kind of pass you by. And so whether it is you're all watching something on Netflix together and it gets a little bit awkward because suddenly it started to take a bit of a turn towards a sex scene and you're all kind of like doing this, or you're fast forwarding it really quickly as you can.
When a mummy and daddy love each other very much, but they're not mummy and daddy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there is that element of, okay, there are going to be these natural points in life where maybe you can start to say, actually, let's have a conversation about this. But it's probably never a good idea just to sit them down at the kitchen table and say, let me ask you, have you looked at porn? And I wouldn't, don't worry. I basically said, you don't have to do it like that. Generally, way I've approached it with my girls has been around things like we've talked about TV shows. And we've had some conversations and where, I'll be like, they've been watching something. And I will say, what are you making of that series that you're watching? And then I'll say, oh, yeah, but there was, because it's something I've seen ages ago or whatever. And I'll go, oh, yeah, but there was quite a lot of sex scenes in it, wasn't there? And then go, oh, yeah, I suppose so. But you can then start there, So as an example of just going, so, let's talk about that for a second, and so I think it's always going to feel awkward. It's never going to feel natural, but I think it's about grabbing those moments when you can. Another thing we sometimes talk about when we do work with parents is, again, because they're digital natives, one of the things we can do is if we find something that we think, so there's some websites and things which help young people critique and question pornography. So one website is called Fight the New Drug, okay? And it's lots of videos, lots of kind of science-based and story-based stuff that helps young people question and critique whether porn's okay. And as a dad, you could go to that website, Fight the New Drug, take a look at some of the stuff on there. If you see a video, send a link to it. WhatsApp your son or daughter and go, I've just found this online. Watch it, please. Tell me what you think about it. And that starts a conversation. Now, they might be looking through their fingers going, oh, my goodness. But it's still, I think, one of the things we have to do in terms of we kind of have to be the ones who take the initiative. Occasionally, and it's certainly happened, and I guess this would be the other side of your conversation, your question. Occasionally, it's the child who comes to the parent, right? Because they actually are asking for help. They're kind of saying, I've messed up. I know a dad who, there was a letter on his, on his bed from his daughter saying, I just need to tell you and mum about this. I've been watching these shows. I've been watching them all the time. It's kind of not, wasn't a website. It was, streaming stuff, but it's all 18s and it's all the sex scenes, and that's what I'm just watching, the sex scenes, and I feel terrible about it and that stuff. And then that dad and mum just going into her room and just hugging her and just saying, look, we love you and let's talk about this. And, how we respond in those moments is just as important as how do we start an awkward conversation, right? Because in the end, what we want to do is we want to create a culture that says, this is okay to talk about. This is normal to talk about. And actually, you don't get in trouble around this stuff. I just want to love you and help you. I'm not going to be judging you or shaming you. And I think that's really, really important, particularly because, even in this culture that we've discussed at length that sort of says, oh yeah, porn's just a bit of harmless fun. I think when it comes to your parents, you're going to feel some shame about them knowing or talking about porn if you are using porn or you've seen some porn. So actually, in some ways, the most that you can do to kind of remove some of that shame is going to make that an easier conversation. And so that can be hard for some dads because they're struggling with their own stuff.
I was going to say the elephant in the cave here is that
yeah,
the primary audience for this podcast is men aged 35 to 44. So this is probably most of what we're saying is actually not that much news to at least a fair percentage.
Yeah, well, it won't be news maybe for a good percentage. I mean, of our own surveys as Naked Truth we've done, 13%, so just over 1 in 10 of the people who were surveyed, and that was about 2,000 people, men and women, from all walks of life, all religions, all the rest of it. 13% said they were, and they used the term, they identified with the term addicted. So more watched porn or had seen porn, but 13% said they were addicted. So even if we just talk about that group for a second and just say, okay, are those listening, maybe 1 in 10 identify as this has become a life-controlling thing for me. This has become something that I don't feel I've got control over. It's negative. It goes against what I want for myself and my marriage maybe, or my relationships. And so I've been trying to stop and I haven't been able to. That even that probably describes 1 in 10 of people listening now. So yeah, that makes then conversations with your kids that much more tricky because you feel like a bit of a hypocrite maybe, or you feel like I can't talk about this because I'm feeling these emotions around it, and the guilt and the shame and the frustration and disappointment. I mean, what's really interesting you just said there is this won't be news to people, what we've talked about, but I wonder sometimes whether it is. I think you can be somebody who's using porn, it's become a life-controlling thing for you, and you think you're the only one. You think I'm just like, it's just me. There's something wrong with me. You're not sitting there thinking it's 1 in 10 of the people. Another stat I do remember is Ofcom did a survey of adults in the UK. 49% of them said they'd looked at porn that month. So if you feel like you're the only one, then you are not the only one. It doesn't mean if you don't look at porn, you're not the only one either. But it is really important to realise that this is something that a significant number of people are struggling with. And I think that actually can help you have conversations with your children in the sense that if you allow that shame and that guilt and that inclination that you perhaps have to keep things in the little black box and to keep things in the shadows and not really face up to it for yourself and say, have I got a problem that might need some help? Then the knock-on of that is you don't get anywhere near asking the question, do my kids need help? Are they struggling to navigate this world? And so there's something that we need to be able to do as parents that says, actually, maybe I can't face up to this for myself, but maybe I can face up to this for my kids. Maybe I need to ask myself some of these difficult questions. Do I need help? Do I need to reach out and get some support around this? Not just because it's actually something I identify I need, but because actually at the moment my problem is getting in the way of me being able to even talk to my kids about it.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed that or found it helpful, please do click the like button. If you're new to the channel, you can subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about all our latest videos. And finally, if you're in a position right now to support Care for the Family, you can do so following the link in the video description. As a thank you to you, we'll send you a load of resources for you and your family. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.